Hey everyone, the next topic that we are going to cover is employment income. This is a very important chapter because it covers around 10 to 15 marks in the examination. For ACCA, it's like 7 to 10 marks, or maybe sometimes 12 marks also. And for ATT and AAT, it's minimum 10 marks and maximum it can go to 18 marks as well. So, this is the very important chapter, and to say that this is not only a calculation based chapter but also it goes very well along in the personal life, because everybody would be paying taxes on the salaries that they are earning. Then they have to fulfill various compliance obligations, so all of that has to be covered. So that is why we will be covering each and every topic and the taxability of that. Each topic is linked to the previous topic, so don't directly jump to the few seconds ahead, or don't miss the entire video, because we will be linking and studying till the end. So let's start. First of all, employment income. It's the most important topic for 10 to 15 marks. It's very important for practical life, as payroll is something that is very crucial and that we deal on daily basis as well. Now, this is the chart of employment income, what we are going to study. This is basically a summary of what points we will be going ahead in the next videos, and the taxability of those points as well. Now, first of all is assessable earnings. What all will be covered in assessable earnings? The first one is whether the person is employed or self-employed, because if the person is employed, then that has to be covered under employment income, and if it is self-employed, that would be income from business or profession or trade. Next is salaries and benefits. So a person, when he is into the employment, he is not only getting the salaries, rather he could be getting certain benefits also. It could be like performance based bonus, it could be annual bonus, he could be getting a commission as well. Then there could be certain other benefits, like he's getting the car from the company for which he is privately using that car, and so on. There could be other benefits as well. Next is share schemes. You could have heard of various ESOP plans that the companies provide to their employees. Then, sometimes when the employee terminates or the employer terminates the employment for the employee, then for the loss of office, certain redundancy payment is also paid to the employee. Now, it's not only about income tax that has to be paid on the employment income or the salaries. It is the NIC also, which is the national insurance contributions in UK, that every person has to pay, be that person be employed or he could be self-employed. Now, for the persons who are self-employed, they have to pay two types of national insurance taxes. One, which is class 1 NI, which is further divided into two categories. One, which is paid by the employee, is called as the primary national insurance, and the second one is secondary national insurance, class 1. But the national insurance that is paid on benefits is not class 1 NI, rather it is class 1A NI. We will be discussing about national insurance in the next chapter. The next chapter which we will do is togetherly called as national insurance. Now, what is the distinction between employment and self-employment income? It is very important to understand these distinctions, because on the basis of this, you will be able to decide that which national insurance has to be paid, which taxes have to be paid, who is having the control over the exercises of business over or over the performance of duties, and so on. Now, the first point is employee. Employee is taxable under employment income provisions, whereas the self employed person is taxed on profits of business, profession, and trade. We have already covered the chapter of self employment income. So, if you have not watched that video yet, do watch that, because that is also one of the important chapters of ATT and ACCA. Yes. Now, we will be discussing who is responsible in the employment income, who is responsible in the self employment income, who is having the more control, who is performing the duties of employment, and so on. So, here we will be discussing the distinctions. The first is obligation. Employee is obliged to follow the employer's commands. Obviously, it is the business of employer, so employee is obliged to follow the command of employer. Now, that command could be what are the work hours, what work has to be done, the employee can't instruct the other person to go and perform the duties on his behalf. But in case of employer, which is in case of self employment, he can work per his wish whenever he wants to. There are no fixed hours that yes, now the work has to be done. Then next is control. Employee can't control the manner and time of work, whereas employer has full control of work and time. Then next comes as risk. If employees are not paid regular remuneration, then that is a financial risk, obviously, because the employee is dependent on the salary that he gets, and if he is not getting that remuneration, then there's a financial risk to the employee. But what about the employer? What risk does the employer has, or what risk does the self-employed person has? He has the risk of earning profits in the business. Where the employer is mostly concerned about the profits of his business, employee is concerned about the salary that he has to get. So there's a financial risk, and here there is a risk of earning profits. Then next is rights. Who is having which rights? Now employee, when he goes into employment, he has various benefits that he can get from the employer. Those benefits include not only salary, but there could be other statutory payments also which the employee is obligated to get. What are these statutory payments? It could be statutory maternity pay, then it could be holiday pay, then if the employee is terminated for the loss of office, redundancy payments are made. Now fathers are also getting the SPP, which is statutory paternity pay, and so on. But can the employer be obliged to get all these rights? He himself is working for himself, so from whom will he ask all these benefits? So yes, employer has no such rights. I hope the distinction is clear. So we'll go through this once again. What are the distinctions between employment and self-employment income? Employment is covered under the employment income provisions, whereas the self-employment is covered under self-employment covers the profits from trade, profession, or vocation. Then employee is obliged to follow the instructions of the employer, but employer can work whenever he wishes to. Then control is in the hands of employer and not the employee, but employee enjoys certain benefits, and those benefits could be SMP, SSP, sick leaves, but the employer is not obliged to all that because it is his business, so who would he ask from? Now, various distinctions relating to taxes and what contributions have to be made by the employer and employee. First of all, self-employment income, it is taxed on current year basis, which we have already discussed in the previous chapter. But the employment income is taxed on receipt basis, which we will be discussing in the next topic. Then, can any expenses be allowed from the employment income? Yes, the expenses which are wholly and exclusively necessary for the performance of duties. But here there would be one more word which is called as necessarily for the performance of duties. So the expenses which are wholly, exclusively, and necessarily important for the performance of employment duties are deductible, but in case of self employment, it is wholly and exclusively for trade. Now, the self employment person will pay, when will he pay taxes? He will pay taxes under the self assessment route, pay taxes under self assessment route, but the employees, they will be paying taxes under PAY system, which is pay as you earn system, pay tax as per PAY. Now, there are certain national insurance contributions. National insurance contributions are basically made to get the benefits after retirement, like state pension, or you would be paying national insurance contributions to get other benefits like maternity pays, maternity benefits, etc. So what NICs will the employers pay and what NICs will the employees pay? Employers have to pay two kinds of national insurance. One, which is for the state pension, that is class 2 NIC, and there's a flat weekly rate for that. But based on profits also, they have to pay certain NICs, which is called as class 4 NIC. Now, on the other hand, employees will be paying just class 1 NIC, which we discussed here also. NIC would be class 1 NIC, employee and employer primary, secondary, and class 1A, that would be on the benefits. Next point is yeah, so we are done with what are the distinctions between employment and self-employment income and what all is covered under assessable earnings. So the topic 1 is done. Now we are moving ahead to the performer for employment income computation. This performer is not to cram what all topics will be covered here. We will just have a quick go through of what topics would be covered under the employment income. As and when you will be solving more illustrations and test your knowledge questions, you will be solving more practical questions. This performer will automatically sit in your mind. And yes, we will be discussing about the taxability of various incomes also, and various deductions also, that when these are allowed, when these are not allowed. So it's nothing to just memorize here. It's all about practice, that it will fit in your mind. So performer for employment income computation, first of all, the employee is obliged to get salary for the performance of duties. So the first head will be salary. Then on the performance of certain conditions or on yearly basis, he would be getting certain bonus. Salespersons are getting certain commissions as well, because they bring more customers or on the sale of x number of products. Then certain benefits. Now what these benefits would be including: ssp, smp, spp, etc. Now we will discuss about them, that whether these are taxable or not. But yes, here we are just discussing that what all will be included in the employment income. Taxability is actually there or not will be discussed ahead. After benefits, the employee may be getting certain expenses also, which he has incurred first from his own pocket, and then those expenses are being reimbursed to him. So those are reimbursed expenses. And then on certain occasions, the employees would be getting cash vouchers. These vouchers are like retail vouchers. For example, there is a certain occasion, and then I am getting a voucher. Let's say I get a voucher of a retail store, I get a voucher of M&S. I don't have to go and pay there, rather I can use this gift voucher instead of making payment. So when nothing is going out from my own pocket, but rather somebody is paying else for me, so this is kind of earning for the employee. So that will also be included in the employment income. Now what all deductions would be allowed from the employment income? The deductions are: expenses wholly, exclusively, and necessarily for the performance of duties of employment; contribution to employer's occupational pension scheme. Now what does this mean? See, employee has to make certain payments, NIC payments, PAY tax payments, but something has to be done where the employee is motivated to contribute for his retirement earnings also. So there's something called as occupational pension scheme for the employee, but that is set up by the employer. So if the employee is making certain contributions to that occupational pension scheme, that is also allowed as a deduction. Now when I say it is allowed as a deduction, it means that there would be no tax charged on this income. Then now let's say I'm a member of ACCA organization and I am paying my yearly subscription to ACCA. So would that be allowed as a deductible expense? Yes, because to get that qualification and then to put that into my employment terminologies, because I would be having knowledge, only then I can go ahead and perform the activities. So any subscriptions that are paid to the professional bodies will be allowed as a deductible expense. Next is charitable donations payroll deduction scheme. Now the government HMRC encourages various donations also, which you make under the payroll scheme. What does this mean? That instead of getting if for example, if you're getting salary of £100, you direct your HR that £5 have to be contributed as donations, which means you directly make a salary sacrifice of this £5 and make a charitable donation. So yes, why would you pay tax on this amount as well? Next is travel and subsistence expenses. This is the most important topic, travel and subsistence expenses. Why? Because the employee will travel from home to the workplace. Sometimes, like in audit scenarios, employee has to go not only to the workplace, rather he has to go to places like the client's workplace. So then also there would be traveling expenses. Now sometimes, let's say in the building where the employer has his office, there is certain construction service going on, and then the temporary workplace is appointed for the employee. Now when the employee goes from his home to the temporary workplace, whether the expenses would be allowed or not. And also when he is out on travel, he incurs certain expenditures. Now let's say I went for an audit, on the way I grabbed a McDonald's burger. So would that be also allowed as an expenditure? That was not a travel expenditure, but yes, that was a subsistence expenditure incurred while traveling in the performance of my duties. So yes, that would also be allowed. Then next is deficit on mileage allowance. Mileage allowance is something that the employee gets when he uses his private car. So we will be discussing about this in the later topics, but just to fit it here, deficit on mileage allowance is also allowed as a deduction. Next is cost of partnership shares acquired in a tax advantaged SIP. In ATT, this is altogether a new topic. Yes, we will be discussing this also in the next video. Now, after all these benefits are added and then deductions are subtracted, the total employment income is calculated. But in this you have to add redundancy payment. This is only for those employees who are made redundant from their job or who have lost their office. Then less certain exemptions. Now there would be certain benefits which are not taxable, so you have to exempt benefits also you have to deduct. And then add non-tax advantaged share options. See, this cost of partnership shares, tax advantaged SIPs, and non tax advantaged options. You may not understand it here, but yes, I will specifically write down a separate video for this so that it is easy for you to understand. This performer was just to show you what all is covered in the employment income and what all is not. There's no need to cram it at all. Once we are done with all the benefits, all the exemptions, then you can come back and have a look at this performer so that it becomes easy for you to understand. Okay. Okay. So the next topic is what are we will be now discussing what are the earnings for the employment income. I will be first making you go through various terminologies so that you can have a basic idea of what all we are going to study. Now, what are earnings? Earnings include amount paid for services rendered in past or to be rendered in future. Yes, because let's say you are getting your salary on monthly basis. You have already performed the services, those services have already been rendered, or there could be services which you are yet to render in future. Then next is third party payments. Now what are these third party payments? Sometimes in the hotels you would have seen people will give various tips to the waiters. Now these tips are not directly being paid by the employer to the employee, but yes, the employee is getting certain cash in hand, or like may not be cash in hand, but yes, is getting certain benefit. So that is also called as earning. Payments made by other than employee, that is tips received by taxi drivers or waiters. Now next, when the employee has to join in the organization, certain joining bonus is provided to these employees, which is called as golden hello. Payments made to induce an individual to enter into employment, like joining bonus. Next is, this was golden hellos are given at the time of when the person has joined the employment. Now when the person is moving out of that employment, at that time there is golden handshakes. Handshakes means now the person is leaving. So golden handshakes and restrictive covenant payments, what is that? When the employee is moving to the another organization, there are certain clauses in the employment contract saying that yes, you should not be working for our competitors, or it's like a non-compete fee. So employer would be providing this to the employee. Payments made to employee for undertaking to restrict a person not to work for the competitor, that is also a earning. Whether it is taxable or not, yes, again we will be discussing next. Now, in property income, we discussed what was the basis of assessment. In self-employment income, we discussed what was the basis of assessment. But here in employment income, the basis of assessment is again the receipts basis. But yes, there are certain points here which need to be considered. First of all, receipt. It's not that only when the salary is credited to the person at that time it has to be taxed. First of all, bear in mind that in the UK, the salary is paid to the employee after deduction of tax at source, which is under the PAYE system. So when will this be taxable? When the employee has actually received that amount, means the actual payment date, or when the duties of employment are actually performed, which means the employee becomes entitled to this payment. So the basis of assessment says that employment income is taxed on receipt basis, and which is earlier of actual payment date or date when the individual becomes entitled to this payment. What do you mean by entitled to payment? Say, for example, a person worked from 1st January till 31st December. Sorry, till 31st January. Now, at the end of this month, on 31st January, he became entitled to this payment. Did he become entitled on just 31st January? No. For every single day when he was performing his duties of employment, he was entitled to receive this income. Or the actual payment date. Let's say it's the policy of company that the salary will be credited on the last day of the month. So he received it on 31st January. So this would be the basis of assessment, would be receipts basis earlier of actual payment date or date when the individual becomes entitled to payment. But in case of directors of the company, directors are in a position to manipulate the books of accounts of the company. So there are two more additional rules when it comes to directors. What are these rules? It's the earliest of actual payment date, which we have already studied here, or date when the director becomes entitled to payment, which also we have studied. Now the two additional rules are when sums on account are credited in the books of accounts, or when earnings are determined, which is before the end of period on account or after the end of period on account. See, this will be difficult to understand. I'll explain it with a small example. Now the next, so we will be discussing the example here. Mr. Matthews is a company director earning 60,000 per annum. He normally receives a discretionary annual bonus based on the company's results for each year ending on 31st December. At the board meeting on 25th March 2022, the board agrees that the draft accounts for the year ending 31st December 2021, the board agrees that Matthews will be paid a bonus and duly determine its bonus in the sum of 25,000. This bonus is paid to Matthews on 30th April 2022. So, what is the actual payment date? 30th April 2022. But since Matthew is the director of company, we need to consider two additional points: when sum of accounts is actually credited in the books of accounts, and when the earnings are determined. If this bonus is determined before the end of period of account, then the end of period of account, and after the end of period of account, then when the earnings are determined. So here what they said at their board meeting on 25th March 2022. So first of all, when the year is ending, the year is ending on 31st March. So which case falls here? After the end of period of account. So at the board meeting on 25th March 2022, the board agrees that the draft accounts for the year ending 31st March 2021, the board agreed that the Matthew will be paid bonus and duly determined the bonus of 25,000. This bonus is paid to Matthew on 30th April. Now, which two dates are we given here? Is the actual date of payment given? Yes, that is 30th of April 2022. Date when the individual entitles, this date is actually not given, but during the period he was performing his services, then he was entitled to payment. When sums on accounts are credited in the books, this is not shown, the bonus, but when the earnings are determined, it was determined in the board meeting on 25th March that yes, Matthew will be entitled to bonus, but it was paid on 30th April. So here the game is between these two dates, 25th March and 30th April. So what should be there? The date of physical receipt is 30th April. Matthew doesn't become entitled to payment any earlier than 30th April. The fact that the board agree and determine the bonus does not give Matthew the legal entitlement. The board could change their mind as well. Yes. Since Matthew is a director, we need to consider rule 3. Now, what is the rule 3? Nothing has been credited in the company's books of accounts. Yes, this date is not given. Matthew's earnings were not determined before the end of the company's period, so this does not come into picture. Matthew's earnings were in fact determined on 25th of March, yes, when there was a board meeting. The date of receipt for employment income is 25th March, and the bonus will be therefore taxable in year 21-22. So whether it was 30th of April or whether it was 25th of March, we had to consider, and whichever is earlier of that, that would be considered here. So this was one example of directors relating income. Now we will be talking about the next topic, which is allowable deductions. Means what deductions can be, what amounts can be subtracted from the employment income to arrive at the net figure on which the tax will be payable. Now, what are the allowable deductions? First, I said that traveling expenses, these are very important topic, traveling expenses, because there could be various traveling expenses. Let's read one by one. Traveling expenses only when incurred necessarily in the performance of duties of employment. Now, the employee would say that yes, it is important for me to reach office to perform the duties of employment. Will that be allowed as a deduction? Let's see. Now, but the journal rule is that these expenses should be incurred only when they are necessarily in the performance of duties of employment, which means for personal purposes, if you are traveling, that is not allowed. And then secondly, important for necessary attendance at any place by employee in performance of duties. Example, when the client has to go to audit place, for example, right? Now, no relief will be provided when there is a ordinary commuting, which ordinary commuting means from home to workplace, because whether you're staying near to office, whether you're staying far from office, doesn't matter, you have to come to office, you have to perform your duties of employment. So ordinary commuting traveling expenses are not allowed. Now, what about private commuting? When employee travels from home to any place other than the workplace. See, any place other than the workplace could be client place also, but at client place also you're going for the performance of your duties, so that will be excluded here. But any place other than the workplace or the client's place, that private commuting is not allowed as a deduction. Ordinary commuting is not allowed as a deduction. But what actually is the deduction allowed for? The relief for home from temporary home to, sorry, here it is, home to temporary place of work. Now, what is the temporary place of work? I gave you example in the starting that there's some construction activity going on in the building where there's the office. So the employer has temporarily shifted his workplace from one place to another. So when the employee is traveling from there to the temporary place of work, then yes, the relief can be provided this temporary workplace is only for 24 months. If it is more than that, then it uh, gets covered under the permanent workplace definition. Now, what if that employee has to first go to the normal workplace, pick up the papers from there, and then move to the temporary workplace? Is that allowed? Let's see. Employee passes normal permanent workplace on way to temporary workplace. The relief is available provided. Now, what is the condition? Employee does not stop at the permanent workplace, example for picking up any papers. So there's no relief provided he's stopping at the permanent workplace, else the relief would be available. So let's revise this again regarding the traveling expenses. First of all, when the traveling expenses, the golden rule you have to keep in your mind that when it is necessary for the performance of duties of employment and when it is necessary for attending a workplace or doing the work at that particular workplace, the attendance is required, then traveling expenses are allowed. Will the ordinary commuting be allowed? No, because you have to go to your office whatsoever. Then private commuting, will that be allowed? No. But for what certain expenditures will the travel deduction be allowed? When the employee is traveling from his home to the temporary workplace, provided he does not stop in between at the permanent workplace, and the temporary workplace should only be for a period of 24 months. If it exceeds that, then the travel and subsistence expenses are not allowed. Now that we have done that travel and travel expenses, what are subsistence expenses? I've already explained in the performer that while you're traveling while you're traveling to the workplace, in between you grab a burger or have some drinks and meals in between. So those subsistence expenses are allowed provided they are incidental to the original travel, and that original travel is for the performance of duties of employment. Now, what if the employee is not using the public transportation or other means, rather he's using his own car? So will he be allowed any deduction? Yes, HMRC says that if you're using your private car for the performance of duties of employment to travel there, then yes, it would be allowed. But now employees would be saying, okay, I'm traveling 20,000 miles a year or 30,000 miles a year, so on what rate should this be allowed? HMRC has given some approved rates. What are those approved rates? First of all, approved mileage allowance payments. These are tax-free allowances for the use of own car. Employee who uses their own vehicles for work. Now, the transport mode. If it is cars and vans, then the first 10,000 miles, the allowance that would be paid is 45p. But if it is more than 10,000 miles, then it would be 25p. So let's say that the employee has traveled 15,000 miles a year. So 10,000 would be chargeable at 45p, and remaining 5,000 would be chargeable at 25p, and this is the annual mileage allowance payment that has to be made to the employee. But HMRC has already said that this is the right rate at which you have to reimburse the employee. So if there may be circumstances that the employer has paid less than 45p or the employer has paid more than 45p, what would be the taxable benefit out of that, and what benefit would be exempt? Now, if the mileage allowance received is within rates, what do you mean by within rates? 45p and 25p, then this is not a taxable benefit. It is the actual reimbursement of of AMAP that is approved by HMRC. So it's not a taxable benefit. What if the amounts provided by the employer for mileage is more than the rates approved by HMRC? The excess amount is taxable. Let's say the employer is reimbursing at 50p. So which means 5p at the rate of whatever miles is taxable. Now, let's say the employer is providing 35p instead of 40p. So 10 pounds 10 pence employee has to pay from his own pocket. So how much will be the deduction allowed to the employee? Difference is the allowable deduction, because 45 is allowed and 35 he is getting. So at the rate of 10p into whatever miles he has covered will be allowed as a deduction from the employment income. Hope this is clear. So the first topic, very very important topic, which was traveling expenses deductions. We discussed that what is allowed, what is not allowed, and if the mode of transportation is not the public transportation but rather the employee is using his own vehicle, then mileage allowance is also available. Next topic which we are going to discuss is reimbursement of expenses by employer. Now, let's say few clients came to the workplace. Employee was instructed by the employer that these clients should be taken out for a lunch. The employer did not make immediate payment to the employee. Rather, employee first paid out of his own pocket, and then the employer came up and reimbursed those expenses. Now, will the reimbursement of these expenses be treated as the income of the employee? Why? This should not be treated as income. Why? Because expense was incurred for somebody else, employee just got back the money which he spent for somebody else. So reimbursement of expenses by employer, is it a taxable income? It may be in certain circumstances. What could be the circumstances when uh, the reimbursement is a taxable income? When it is not for the performance of duties of employment, or when it is not necessarily for the employment purpose. Example, employee has got a membership of golf club. Is this necessary for the duties of employment? No. But still he is getting a extra benefit that he had to pay out of his own pocket. Now he is getting that from his employer. So that will be treated as a taxable income. However, tax deduction for business related expenses. Example was when the employee took the clients out for lunch. So business related expenses, that would not be considered as a taxable income. But if it is not business related expenses, employment related expenses, then it will be treated as a taxable income. now now we will be covering certain benefits which are totally exempt, which means which are not taxable. No deduction will also be allowed for this. These are altogether exempt. Now bear in mind that whenever you're solving the employment income questions in your exam, what you have to do is, even if the benefit that you have received is exempt, you have to show it as nil or zero. Let's say this is your performer, you're solving salary income £1000, then bonus 200, then whatever the amounts. Let's say you got a gift out of these. One expense that I am taking is, suppose you got a gift of £100. This is exempt benefit, so this should not be shown here. Rather, it should be shown as zero. Rather than skipping it, you have to show it in the performer, but show it as nil. Okay. Now it's nothing to cram, but yes, again there are certain exempt benefits that are not treated as taxable employment benefits. What are these? Non-cash trivial benefits costing up to £50. So any non-cash benefits that you're getting from the employer. For example, on Christmas, certain employees would be getting a box of chocolates and a bottle of wine. So non-cash benefits up to £50, they are exempt. Employer's contribution to registered pension scheme. Why? Because this is an encouragement for employee to contribute towards his retirement plans. So why should we be asking the employee to pay tax on that? This is exempt because this is to promote the retirement plans of the employee. Next, now the employer, so there would be certain employees in the organization who need pension advice. These could be for either all employees or a group of employees who are nearing their pension age. So pension advice up to £500 per employee per tax year, provided this support is for all employees or the employees nearing the pension category. Employees nearing the pension category. Then medical treatment up to £500 per employee per tax year. Now when the employee falls sick, he may be given the expenses by his employer for getting the medical treatment. Then subsidized canteen, like the employees would be getting Sudoku cards from their employers to get the meals in the cafeteria of their office, where they can get something that is for 10 pounds at 5 or 6 pounds. So subsidized canteens unless part of salary sacrifice scheme, which means either you get it deducted from your salary or subsidized canteen benefits. Then car parking space, because yes, the employee is coming to the office, so he needs car parking space also. There may be certain employees who would be using electric vehicles, so charging point for those electric vehicles is also considered as exempt benefit. Provision of work buses, bicycles, subsidies for public transport. Yes, sometimes the employees are given the transport or travel cards, so these are exempt. One mobile phone per employee. Yes, that is allowed because you may have to attend business calls or work related calls, so that is exempt. This one phone per employee will be covered in a topic which is called as use of assets. So we will be covering this in use of assets topic. Next is work related training provided by the employer, in house sports, recreational facilities, staff parties up to £150 per employee per annum. So at the time of Christmas or any other occasions, employees may be given in cash benefits also. So up to £150 is exempt. Staff parties up to £150, but if you're getting cash, that has other tax obligations. Next is entertainment from third parties to generate goodwill or gifts from third party, up to £250. Then job related accommodation, again this will be covered separately. Job related accommodation or living accommodation, we will cover this separately. Welfare council, workplace nurseries that your child might get. Now the employer may be paying for in-house workplace nurseries that have been created for the children of the employees, or the employee is going to a certain nursery but the employer is reimbursing for that expense. Contribution towards home worker expense, which means work from home employees, they will be getting a flat rate expense deduction, which is £6 per week, or if you have to take it on monthly basis, then £26 per month. Here no documentation is required because this is a rate approved by HMRC. But for the work from home expenses also, the main condition that is, this should be specifically mentioned in the employment contract that this employee is allowed to work from home, only then. But if the employee does not want to claim £6 per week or £26 per month, then other deductions are also allowed, but then certain documentation proofs have to be submitted. Now next is relocation or removal expenses. This is many times asked in the exam, but if any relocation expenses are provided, only £8,000 are allowed. Then overnight expenses, let's say for certain meeting you have to go out of the city or out of the out in the UK or overseas, so £5 per night is allowed and £10 per night overseas is allowed. Employer liability insurance, workplace charging, e-vehicles we have already done, eye care tests or corrective glasses. Now these would be employed, these would be required, for example certain doctors, because they have to read certain reports in the machines, so corrective glasses for that, that is also considered as an exempt benefit. But the condition is that it is provided to all employees and not specifically to one or two employees. Then long term awards up to £50 per year to mark the employment of 20 years or more. It's like when the employee has been in a long term employment in a company, so as a as a gratitude gesture, £50 per year, let's say the employee worked for 20 years, £50 per year is given, £1,000 is treated as an exempt benefit. Loan with beneficial interest rate provided loan is £10,000 throughout the year. This will also be covered separately. which means up to 10,000 pounds per year is exempt, but if it is more than that and subsidized rates for the loans are provided, that will be covered later. Then, provision of travel or accommodation and subsistence during the public transport when there is a disruption because of industrial strikes. So, let's say on 21st, 22nd, 23rd December, when it's nearing Christmas, then the tube lines are closed in certain areas of London. So at that time, if the employer requests the employee to come to the office for certain important work, and the employee has to take a public transport rather than the tube lines, then for that, if any reimbursement is done, that is a exempt benefit. Then awards under the employee suggestion scheme. So these were all the expenses, the benefits which are exempt benefits. We'll have a quick read through of this while we will discuss the summary. Now, the next point is taxable benefits. What are taxable benefits and what taxable benefits would be allowed in the employment income? If these taxable benefits arise by reason of employment, the golden rule number 1, and secondly, they are provided to employee or the member of household of employee, then both of these would be considered as the taxable benefits. But now if the employee is giving certain the employee is given certain benefit, would that be taxable? Yes, that would be, but on what cost? If I was the employee and I was getting this benefit, then I will pay 100 pounds, for example. But now, on behalf of me, my employer has paid. So, whatever is the cost to the employer will now be treated as a taxable benefit for me, and on that, I will be paying the taxes. So, taxed on cost to employer. But if in house benefit, which means in house benefit, let's take an example, the airline industry, if they're providing the tickets to their employees, so marginal cost to the employer will be taken as the taxable benefit. Let's say the ticket is 1000 pounds for the general public, but to the employees it's the marginal cost, say 650, then this will be treated as a taxable benefit. Now, the important ones which are mostly asked in your exams, important points: one is living accommodation, then car, fuel, vans. This is the most important because it will be asked in every exam. And then next is use and gift of assets. These are two separate benefits, but for the calculation purpose, one question will be given where first employee has used that asset and later that asset was gifted to the employee. So we need to know the tax obligations for both the cases. Next, some benefits available for the part of year. Now, what does that mean? Let's say the employee was given a car by the employer on 1st July 2024, which means tax year starts from 6th April. So this was not provided for the month of April, May, June. So will I calculate the benefit for the entire year? No, this has to be calculated only for the proportionate period when the benefit was actually provided to the employee and not for the full period. Employee contributes towards profits, which means, let's say, uh, in the next topics we will be discussing about when car benefit is provided to the employee. So if the employee is also making certain contribution, now let's say when the employer bought a car for the employee, he paid 10,000 pounds, but out of this employee says, okay, I will pay you 5,000 pounds, 5,000 should be paid by the employer. So this 5,000 pounds should be deductible. Why? Because employee has already paid the money, he's not getting it as a benefit. So employee contribution towards profit should also be allowed as a deduction, except provision of private fuel. This also we will cover separately. Next, employer provides in-house benefits. Example, air tickets. We have already discussed this. additional or marginal cost incurred by the employer, not a proportion of total cost incurred by the employee. It will be, means total ticket cost was 1000 pounds, 750 employee got from the employer, remaining 250 if he has to pay, if any, then that will be treated as a taxable benefit. Now, next is, now we will be starting what all are the taxable benefits. First is cash voucher. Amount of cash should be greater than or equal to the cost of providing it. Example, premium bonds. But if it is a non-cash voucher, for example, for the retail stores like M&S, or I get a voucher of any retail store, so that would be treated as a taxable benefit, because you have to keep in mind that something which is not going out of employee's pocket but going out of employer's pocket, but ultimate responsibility to pay this amount was of the employee, is going to be taxable. The simple rule. Then credit card. Now let's say employer has given a credit card to the employee. What should be the cost? The cash equivalent, which means what should be the taxable benefit for this? Whatever will be the private expense. The more you spend, the more will be the taxable benefit and the more tax you have to pay. Now, next is living accommodation and job related accommodation. These two we have to do together because this is the most important topic in taxable benefits that is mostly asked in exams. Now, let's say employee is given a living accommodation, which means employer has rented out a house for the employee, or employer already has a house but now he's giving that house to the employee to stay in that house. For example, this mostly happens in the case of secondment case employees. They come and stay in the house rented by the employer, or stay in the property owned by the employer. So this is like a benefit, this is like a perk to the employee, so that would be taxable. But then comes something which is called as job related accommodation. Now, certain employees would be requiring job related accommodations. For example, prime minister, because this accommodation is provided for the performance of his duties, because this is necessary for his security reasons. Second example, care worker. Care worker has to stay in the house of that particular person to take care of him. So, job requires that accommodation be provided to this employee. Then, it could be for better performance of duties and for that time of employment. For example, certain person working in a hotel, his employer asks him to stay there because in early mornings he has to perform certain duties there, do the cleaning and etc. So that could be night managers basically. So two accommodations: one where the job requires the employer to provide this accommodation, could be for care workers or for security reasons, or another where the employment is going on at one place but the employee does not come and pay rent or own the property. The property is owned or rented by the employer itself. So when job related accommodation, I have not asked you that I want to stay here, but you are asking me to come and stay at this place. So job related accommodation is not a taxable benefit, provided where it is necessary for the performance of duties, for better performance of duties, or where there is a special threat to the employee's security. Example, the prime minister. But what about the living accommodation? Here, two taxes are paid. One which is called as the basic charge, and second which is called as the additional charge. Now, where the value of property is up to 75,000 pounds, which means this is a small property. So here the basic charge would be on the taxable amount. What is this taxable amount? It's higher of annual property value or rent paid by the employer, which means the property is rented on the behalf of employee and annual property value is taken where the employer already owns the property. But so higher of annual property value or rent paid by the employer will be the cash equivalent, which means will be the benefit, will be the taxable benefit, and on this taxable benefit employee has to pay tax. But what if it is an expensive accommodation, which means the value of property is more than 75,000 pounds? Then, in addition to the basic charge, the employee has to pay certain additional charge also. First of all, additional charge on the expensive accommodation only applicable if the property is purchased by the employer, right? Any property which is rented by the employer is not covered in additional charge. Now the benefit will be basic charge plus cost of accommodation exceeding 75,000 pounds into ORI. What is ORI? Original rate of interest, which is 2.5% that we have to consider for the exam. So now how will you determine the cost of accommodation? The cost of accommodation is purchase price when that property was originally purchased, plus certain improvements would have also been done in the meantime. So cost of improvements also to be done. Now, if you're computing the taxable benefit for 24-25, any improvements done before the start of tax year have to be considered. Now, we say that the cost of properties purchase price basically has to be considered. Now, when was property purchased? In the near future, few years ago, we have to check that. First of all, if the property is owned by the employer 6 years before giving to the employee, because 6 years HMRC says that now the property has been for quite a long time with the employer. So we will be using the market value of the property when first provided to employee and not the purchase price. Now the employer, let's say employer asks the employee to stay in this accommodation on 10th of April 2024, but the employer owned this property in April 2016. So it has been 6 years. Should I consider this value or should I consider the market value when this was first given to the employee? Obviously the market value, because this price, the original purchase price would be very low, right? So when property was purchased, if it is owned by the employer 6 years before giving to employee, use market value of the property when first provided and not the purchase price. But to check whether it is an expensive accommodation, which means whether it is exceeding 75,000 pounds or not, then you have to check the original cost, the original purchase price, and not the market value. So this was one very very important topic that is mostly asked in taxation examination F6, advanced taxation, and very important for ATT AAT also. So living accommodation is done, job related accommodation is not a taxable benefit. Next is, when you are living in that accommodation, there will be certain expenses incidental to the living cost. What would be those expenses? Like light and heating, water, etc. Employer is saying, I will pay these expenses also. So will this also be a taxable benefit for the employee? Let's read. When the living accommodation expenses are ancillary benefits, lighting and heating, if these are expenses are connected with the living accommodation, then the benefits are limited to 10% of net earnings. Let's say the employment income is 100,000 pounds. Other benefits which are taxable is 10,000 pounds. Then these other benefits include living accommodation, car benefits, etc. Now the employee is getting living accommodation benefits, light and heating expenses also. This may be different in different years, different months, basis on the basis of usage, light and heating. So a standard rate is given, and that standard rate is 10% of net earnings, which means exclude this employment income, add all the benefits, less all the deductions, whatever is the net earnings, just multiply it with 10%, and this net earnings would be excluding the living accommodation expenses. Just multiply by 10% and that would be applied. And what are all these living accommodation expenses? It will be light, heat, cleaning, repair, maintenance of the premises, or use of furniture, goods for domestic occupation. Hope that is clear. Now, the next topic which we are going to cover is use of assets or gift of assets by the employer. Now, we have already covered living accommodations. Now, in that living accommodation, we also covered that if the employer has provided furniture or fixtures and certain other equipments, so how those will be taxable. Now, use of assets, which we will be covering now. For example, there are certain gym equipments that are provided for the use of employee. Now, employee was about to pay for those gym equipments from his own pocket, but now the employer is paying for those use of equipments. So how will this be taxed? Use of assets. Employee is using the asset for his private use, or ownership is still with, and sorry, here it is, and the ownership is still with the employer, which means the asset originally belongs to the employer, but now the benefit of that is being used by the employee. So what is the tax benefit? HMRC will tax it at flat 20% of open market value when first made available, which means usually the cost. So 20% of the market value of that asset, because these equipments will not be like 5 years 10 years ago something, they will be present equipments that you have brought when you gifted them to them, when you gave it to the employee for the use. So open market value of that asset has to be used, and 20% of that open market value will be considered as a taxable benefit for the employee, where the employer rents the asset made available to the employee. Now, what if the employer has not directly provided it but rents it to the employee? Then the taxable benefit is rent paid by the employer, because employer was not originally having it. He rented it further and then provided it to the employee. So the taxable benefit will be rent paid by the employer or the 20% rule, whichever is higher. Now, what if this asset was originally used by the employee for some period of time, but now the employer says that yes, you can take it as a gift. So, which means some portion of this amount would have already been used by the employee, and when used, 20% of the open market value would also be taxable. Now, when it is a gift, so the remaining portion which is not taxable will become taxable now. Let's see. Gift of assets. Employer purchases new asset and gifts to employee immediately. Then the taxable benefit is cost to the employer, which we already studied, that cost to employer is mostly treated as cash equivalent. But if the employee has also contributed for certain amount, that will be deducted, and on this will be considered as a taxable benefit, and here the tax will be paid. But gifted to employee after use by the employer, the employer was using it first, and now the employer has come and gifted it to the employee. The taxable benefit will be market value of the asset when gifted, but it was made available to the employee for his use also before actually gifting him, and at that time he had already paid some tax. So market value of asset when first made available to the employee, less benefit already taxed. Example, £100 was the market value of the asset when given to the employee for his use. 20% of open market value is the tax benefit or tax value. So let's say he used it for 2 years. So £40 tax he has already paid. And now when it was gifted to the employee, then £60 only would be taxable. £60 for the use of this asset by the employee and later gifted, or the market value of asset when gifted, whichever is higher, 60 pounds, or let's say here the market value is 120 pounds. So whichever is higher will be considered as the taxable benefit for the employee. Next, cars. When I said that there are certain important topics in this chapter, one of them we have already studied, which is the living accommodation. It could be living accommodation or JRA, which is job related accommodation. JRA is not a taxable benefit, but living accommodation, yes. In living accommodation, we studied two types of tax charges. One is the basic charge, where the accommodation is not an expensive one, and the second is additional charge, where the accommodation is more than 75,000 pounds. Now, the next topic which you have to not miss at any cost, because this is always asked in the examination, is cars, taxable benefit of cars, where a car is made available for private use. Sorry, see, what is HMRC's intention taxing uh, for taxing the benefit provided in the form of cars? First of all, these cars, they're not only used for business purpose, they can be used for business purpose also, as well as private purpose also. So rather than sitting and distinguishing that what is the private mileage covered by this car and what is the business mileage covered by this car, HMRC will tax the benefit on the basis of list price of this car. Simple, straightforward. Second thing on which the benefit would depend will be CO2 emissions of this car. First thing, in order to unnecessarily avoid the chaos of the miles traveled personally or for private use, they are directly using the list price. But also, they want greener roads, they want greenery, they want less pollution, so they are promoting more of e-vehicles, electric cars. So if you're having electric cars, zero CO2 emissions, less is the percentage of tax you have to pay, or less percentage is treated as a taxable benefit. But the more CO2 emissions are made by this car, the more will be considered as taxable benefit, and then you have to pay more tax. So the logic behind this, that why list price and why CO2 emissions, is clear. Now you just have to memorize that what percent. First of all, memorizing the percentage is also not required, because this will be given in the examination, but the formula how to calculate that is important. Where a car is made available for private use, the benefit will be list price of the car when first registered, which means not when it is provided to the employee. It's not the price that you have to consider when provided to the employee, rather it is a list price when first registered, into appropriate percentage. How that appropriate percentage will be calculated, we will discuss after this. But the list price, now what will be the list price? List price is original price when the car was first registered, and after you got the car, you may have to put certain accessories on this car, like the seat covers and so on. So that is also included in the original price. What if employer paid 50,000 pounds for this car, and employee says, maybe I'll take it later in the future, I want to pay 20,000 out of this. Will that be allowed? Employees contribution is allowed, but maximum to the extent of 5,000 pounds. So list price of the car when first registered, list price is price when first registered, includes cost of accessories, less capital contributions by the employee, and maximum allowed is 5,000 pounds. This is the taxable benefit. Now, this is basically the list price, and then appropriate percentage. The percentage depends on the rate at which the car emits CO2. More is the CO2 emissions, more will be the taxable benefit. Now, if the car is an electric car, which means it's a zero CO2 emissions car, so the taxable benefit will be just 2%. Appropriate percentage we read here. Here the appropriate percentage would be 2%. 2% into list price of the car. But what if it is a hybrid electric car, which means generating CO2, where the CO2 emissions are like 1 to 50 grams per kilometers. So here, more CO2 emissions, more will be the taxable benefits. Now this table, the range, you don't need to learn it, it will be given in the exam. 130 miles or more, 2%, 70 to 129, 5, 40 to, see, the more you're traveling, the more the percentage of this is increasing. But what about the petrol and diesel cars? See, the difference would be, first would be electric cars, zero emissions, simply 2%. Then petrol and diesel cars, here you have to consider the CO2 emissions. But in case of hybrid cars, you don't need to consider the CO2 emissions, rather you need to consider the miles. On the basis of miles, this percentage would be allowed. Now, petrol and diesel cars meeting RDE standards. CO2 emissions per kilometer. More are the emissions, more will be the percentage, which we already read. See, it starts from 15%, then 16%. But if it goes above 55 grams per kilometer, then 1% additional would be the tax benefit on every 5 grams above 55 grams. Now, what does this mean? Let's say this car was emitting CO2 emissions as 100 grams, which means it is covered in this category, over 55 grams. So, over 55 grams, for every 5 grams, 1%, which means 16 plus this much percentage is added. Now let's say this was 102 and not 100. Round down to minimum, round down to lower of 5. So which will be 100 minus 55. Additional 4% supplement for diesel cars or other than those meeting RDE2 standards. But the maximum percentage which we are calculating here, additional 1%, the maximum can go only up to 37% and not more than that. Now, let's say this car was not available for all 12 months, but it was provided in the last 6 months of the year. So proportionate benefit will be taxable. Let's say, sorry, now benefits takes into account all the running expenses of the vehicle. When you will show the list price will already include all the running expenses, so you don't need to separately add insurance benefits, repairs or maintenance, etc. You don't need to separately add that. Apply the percentage directly on the list price, but including cost of accessories also. So the benefit will be reduced by period for which the car was unavailable for more than 30 consecutive days. It's not that 1 month it was available, then next 15 days it was not, then again 1 month, again 15 days. This is not consecutive 30 days, where consecutive 30 days the car is not available, then the benefit has to be proportioned. And if the employee makes contribution towards the running cost, that will also be reduced. Now, the car can't run without the fuel. Now, what if the employer pays the amount for fuel also? So, what will be the taxable benefit? The percentages we have already considered here, the appropriate percentage. In case of car benefit, it was appropriate percentage into list price. But in case of fuel benefit, it will be appropriate percentage into multiplier provided by HMRC, and that multiplier is 27,800. This is also given in the exam. So the question will be asked together for when the car was provided to the employee and then the fuel cost was also provided by the employer to the employee. So first you have to calculate the appropriate percentage, then you have to calculate the list price, then this percentage that you calculated above will be added here in the case of private fuel also. Let's say that the total fuel cost is 100 pounds. Employee says 50 pounds I'll pay, 50 pounds I'll get it from the employer. No, that's not allowed. Either it is the full amount that the employee has to pay, the partial amount paid by the employee is not taken into consideration. That's what it is mentioned here. Contribution made by the employee towards private fuel are ignored unless all private fuel is reimbursed. And if all the private fuel is reimbursed, which means originally it is going out from the employee's pocket and then it is being reimbursed, then there is no taxable benefit. So that's all. So this was all regarding part 1 of employment income, where we have discussed various topics, and these topics are what is assessable earnings, salaries, benefits, then there would be certain deductions allowed from the employment income, what taxes we have to pay under the PAY scheme, then national insurance contributions, what are the distinctions between employed and self-employed persons. Then we studied the performer of employment income calculation, which you don't have to memorize, but as and when we will be discussing various benefits and deductions, that will automatically be in your mind. So it's just to keep it in front of you and keep solving the questions, because the more you will practice, you will get to know that this is to be allowed, this is not to be allowed, and exempt benefits. Don't skip it from your answer, just put it as zero, put it as nil while solving the questions. Then certain earnings we discussed: golden hellos, golden handshakes, then non-covenant payments, then third party payments. Then what was the basis of assessment? There were two rules: when the employee is entitled to receive that payment and when the employee has actually received the payment. But in case of directors, since they have the power to manipulate the books of accounts, and two additional rules are given. Those additional rules are: if these earnings were determined before the end of the year or after the end of the year. If before the end of the year, then the end of the period would be considered, but if after the actual date of payment, or when these sums are actually credited to the books of accounts. Then certain allowable deductions we discussed. These deductions were any subscriptions paid to the professional bodies, contributions towards your retirement plans, which is the pension schemes, then traveling expenses. Traveling expenses we discussed: if it is ordinary commuting, then it is not allowed. Then, but if it is commuting for the performance of duties, or if it is for the temporary workplace commuting without stopping at the permanent workplace, then that is allowed as a deduction. Then along with that, we discussed that if you're not using the public mode of transportation, rather you're using the private mode like your personal cars, then HMRC has given a rate at which the mileage can be claimed, which is 45p for first 10,000 miles and 25p for the next 10,000 miles. Now if you are paid equal to 45p or 25p, then it's exempt. You don't need to add or less any amount. But if it is provided more than 45p, then the excess amount will be treated as a taxable benefit. If you're provided less than 45p, then the difference amount will be shown as deduction from your employment income. Then next is reimbursement of expenses. If these expenses are for the performance of duties of employment, yes, the reimbursements will not be taxable. But if it is for other expenses, which are personal expenses of employees, example membership of golf club, etc., then it will not be treated as then it will be treated as a taxable benefit. Now certain exempt benefits we discussed, like medical treatment, eye tests, then subsidized canteens, then car parking space, e-vehicles, charging points, and so on. So those are the exempt benefits. After that, we started discussing about the taxable benefits, and out of the taxable benefits, two very important topics we have covered today. One, which is living accommodation and job related accommodation. Living accommodation, to check whether it is expensive accommodation or not an expensive accommodation. Then expensive accommodation, it is basic charge plus additional charge, but non expensive accommodation, it is just the basic charge. Job related accommodation, job requires the employee to stay at that workplace, so it is not a taxable benefit. Then we discussed about cars. So rather than calculating the miles covered by that car, because car could be used for both business as well as the private purpose, rather than calculating the miles, HMRC has made it simple, and the percentage of the amount of taxable benefit will be calculated as a percentage of list price, and adding any accessories that have been put on by the employee for the use of that car, less employee contribution, but maximum up to 5,000 is allowed. But um, if fuel is also provided, then if the full amount of fuel has been reimbursed by the employer, that is not a taxable benefit. But the cost of taxable benefit in case of fuel provided by employer is 27,800, which is the multiplier into appropriate percentage. Appropriate percentage in the case of car or fuel is determined on the basis of CO2 emissions. In case of electric car, zero CO2 emissions, the rate is something else. But in case of hybrid cars, it depends on range of miles. In case of petrol cars or diesel cars which do not meet RDE2 standards, then it is 1 to 50 pounds 50 grams per kilometer, then 51 to 55, and anything exceeding 55, additional 1% has to be paid. But for that, 37% is the maximum benefit, maximum percentage that is allowed, and that is treated as a taxable benefit. So this was part 1 about employment income taxation. Similar benefits, taxable benefits, non-advantage shares, tax advantage, non-tax advantage, tax advantage shares, all will be covered in the next video, which is very very important. And certain taxable benefits are also still left, which we will be covering in the next video. So stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, and also comment in the comment section how you like this video and if you want any specific topics to come up in the next video. Thank you so much.